Hey there, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, no matter where you are. I am so glad you're able to join us today. It's going to be a good show today. It's all about list building, and can you do it without breaking the bank? For those of you who don't know, my name is Daryl Prale, and I've got my partner in crime over there. If you haven't met him, his name is Rick Engelot.
Hey, Daryl.
Rick is with a firm called Virtual Causeway. He's the sales and marketing campaign expert. I'm with my lead agency, and this is Talking Bluntly. The nice thing is we have a wonderful guest coming here. His name is Eric Moore. He is a...
Hi, guys. Good afternoon.
Well, how you doing, Eric?
I'm good. Let me just jump right in there, Daryl.
I love that. Well, for the sake of the audience, let me give you a little background about Eric. He's been working in marketing research at nearly every level, in many industries and in many different capacities, from his start as a data analyst at a national nonprofit organization to his work as director of product management at a consulting agency to his current role as president of mPanel Online. He's a graduate at the University of South Florida, and he lives near Atlanta, Georgia. How's the weather this time of year there, Eric?
Fantastic up in Flowery Branch. Fantastic.
Oh, you know, it's not so nice here. It's a rainy day, and what's challenging for the audience is that just before we started recording this session, we actually had to go have Eric go out to all the kids in his pool and to quiet down so we could do the session. Life is tough, Eric. That's all I got to say.
It is tough, and the kids are happy to be out of school, and doesn't work well for conference calls.
All right. So, guys, this is Talking Bluntly. And today's Blunt Talk, as you know, is about how to build a list and doing it affordably. And what I always find amazing myself is how many of my clients avoid this like the plague. And, Rick, I don't know what your experience is, but it seems they've got a list a mile long, and they know they got to do it, and yet they avoid it. And I think they avoid it because it scares the crap out of them, and I think it's because they think it costs a ton of money. So, I mean, what's your experience been?
Well, I think, unfortunately, a lot of people don't really think about the list. They think and focus a lot of their time on their marketing campaigns, their marketing design and creative, but don't pay a lot of attention to who they're actually marketing to. So, one thing that we find and that we've encountered over the years is that, people are finally starting to get to the point where they're starting to think about quality of their data. So there's a great research firm called Serious Decisions, and actually just got back from their annual conference a few weeks ago in San Diego, and they do a really good job of explaining the actual financial impact of bad data. So if you're looking at, in general... Just
as an aside, do you remember much of that conference?
I do. The slides were presented after. I was able to read the slides on the flight home.
I know, and disclosing, I was there with Rick at the conference, and it was a fantastic conference. Plug to Serious Decisions. They should be following us. Go ahead. What are we looking at here, Rick?
So, great slide from Serious Decisions talking about the impact of bad data. If you take a look at the slide, you can see that on average, based on their research within specifically technology companies in North America mostly, on average, 25% of data is bad or inaccurate within companies' marketing databases. So that's on the average. Strong companies or companies that are doing a little bit better or best in practice probably run at around 10%. And so basically what they're saying is that based on those percentages of bad data, if you can just move the needle a little bit and move from a 25% bad data rate and get that number down lower, you can actually see some dramatic increase in the actual revenue. So if you look at the slide on the average side for a prospect database of 100,000 names, so 25% bad data means you have 75,000 usable records. If you work through the typical sales funnel or the demand waterfall, what that for an average firm works out to is, let's say, 3.9 closed or won deals. At an average sale price of $50,000, that means the revenue of about $195K. For a strong company or a company that has a better percentage of usable data, right away they're starting off with a higher number. We're looking at 90,000 usable records. And as you work through that funnel, you see that actually it results in a much stronger and a higher average or actual sale price based on the average sale price of $50,000. So a strong database leads to, in this case, a 66% rise in revenue versus an average database.
Now, for those who didn't catch it, this table assumes you're starting off with 100,000, And what I find amazing about this, and bringing it back to the title, guys, is that it was all about doing it affordably. So if I look at this, you're just telling me I can get a 66% bump in revenue versus the average database if I invest to get mine to best in class. So I guess I asked the question to both Eric and Rick here, define affordably.
Eric, how do you want to take that one?
Sure. Well, I mean, the affordables obviously. You're going to set your goals, but it depends on what your goals are. And if you're talking, there's just some great, and I hope we can edit this out because it's not working very well. I actually didn't hear Dale's question, but affordable is going to be what fits your budget. What are your goals? Do you have an ROI goal, for example? So, so it's going to be internal to the customer. For us, it's going to be what is the cost of your final research, and just fitting in that it's a little bit more risk free when you're talking about risk. When you're talking about research, because we're talking about cost per complete rather than versus a list cost. So it's a little bit different animal, but you're just going to have to work within a budget.
Yeah, and I think what it really boils down to is when you look at affordability, it's all relative. So if you're talking about building a database, or you're talking about how you're spending your money in terms of your marketing or your marketing campaigns, it really depends on who you're marketing to. So if you have an internal database and there's a segment of it that's your high value customers or high value prospects that represent a potential large amount of revenue, it's fine to spend some money on that part of the database. But if you have some other stuff that you're doing that potentially is not going to have a huge return, then obviously from an affordability standpoint, you need to keep that in mind.
From my point of view, though, guys, my budget's finite. And I know this. I mean, it's maybe I don't know it as empirically as I'm seeing here from Sirius, but I know that clean data means better business, more closed business, and definitely more marketing qualified leads. But the reality is my budget is fixed and it's finite, and I've got to run these campaigns because I've got to fill the pipe, and I don't have the excess money to go and do the campaigns. So, it's one of those non-sexy things that's hard to justify. So what we'll do when we move on, and we'll talk about some of the ways you can do it that perhaps is affordable, another way, and we can qualify affordable as we go along. So Rick, I know you're passionate about this. We actually were bantering before the show about who would start this one first, and he was first with his hands up in the air. So let's just start with list quality, because I know from your clients, this is probably one of the biggest beefs you see, and I know when we banter, you talk about going after them. Rick's smiling at me, guys. When you go after them about the list quality, and it's kind of like, yeah, I know, mea culpa, but see what you can do anyway. So talk to me about that.
And by the way, Daryl, I appreciate the fact that you introduced the term non-sexy. I think, when I think of non-sexy, I do think of Daryl, so that's good.
Eric, defend my honor here, or maybe that's a bad idea.
No, we'll just let that one go. Well, so I mean, once again, talking about affordability and using that as an underlying theme, and the fact that a lot of people, especially on the marketing side of things, like to spend money, or they can spend money on things that are a little more tangible. So if they're developing a marketing campaign or they're developing collateral, it's something that they can touch and they can touch and feel. The challenge with data is that a lot of times you don't really understand it and how it impacts your campaigns until you run your campaigns. So I think that's a big challenge. But as we look at how we can quickly and affordably improve your list quality, I think one of the things we need to do, first of all, depending on the company, is understand if you have a list. A lot of companies may not even have a marketing database today, and they might have a customer list, or they might have some other stuff out there, but they don't necessarily have what we would call a marketing list. So how do you market today? Who do you market to? Could you even pull together a list of your current customers? How about prospects? How accurate is that data? So I think, step one is, do you actually have a list, and what kind of format is it in? And then based on that, then you start looking at the quality. So, we talked about the Sirius Decisions stuff. So a lot of people, no matter how how much they guarantee the quality of their data. When I talk to my clients, a lot of clients will say we've got this great list. I guarantee you it's high quality. It's our customer list. It's perfect. There's no issues with it. And then we work on a campaign and realize that 30 to 40% of the data is bad. So I think it's important to be kind of conservative and always take a kind of almost a worst case scenario approach to lists and just assume that the quality is going to be on the lower side. So some things you could do then to improve your quality are looking at stuff like different kinds of services. There's some online and offline services and different types of ways to do it. So there's services like Data.com, ZoomInfo, NetProspects, where you can actually take an existing list, bump it up against their database, and they can fill in the blanks and help you with some of the quality of the data, or at least validate the quality of the data. There's social systems like LinkedIn where you can run some targeted queries to find contacts that fit certain criteria. So use that to help build some better quality contacts, or even join some targeted groups maybe within LinkedIn. Or you can, look at ways where you might even expend some manual labor for your team or maybe an outsourced provider to research your contacts. So, maybe just pick up the phone, call the contacts, validate the contact info, the title, and guess what? If she's not there anymore, your prospect's not there anymore, who replaced her? Filling in some of that data is really important. So doing kinds of things like that can help really improve the list quality.
Now, let me jump in here, right? Because I think part of the problem is that people get freaked out on cost because they view list quality as the process of cleaning the list. And really, there's list quality, there's kind of a before and after, right? If you've already got bad data, then it's all about what can we do to clean the list, which is historically perhaps more expensive. But there's things you can do as well in advance of when you're collecting that data the first time, which is about how do you get quality contacts out of the gate, right? So there's a big difference there. So if it's, cleaning from that point of view, there's things you can do, even just looking at how, do you track the sign up date of when people join your list? Because right away, you can age it pretty quickly to know if they should be actually removed. Sometimes bigger isn't necessarily better. Sometimes it's just more targeted focused things. And the other thing you can do is you can actually ask your own contacts to update their profiles, right? So you can actually email them. It's a courtesy. I've never been offended once when someone's come to me and said, hey, you haven't talked to you in a while, haven't heard from you, whatever. If you don't want to hear from us, tell us, all right? And by the way, while you're here, this is what we have on record for you. So that's kind of cool. Now, simple ways you can do it affordably. Now you want to flip it around to when you're capturing that. All right, so how do you do it? So, renting lists and throwing that into your contacts, if you can get that information, it's gonna be typically a spam potpourri. You want to avoid that if all possible, as long as you're getting into, or at least do that as a separate campaign. Don't put them in your master list. Same thing with buying lists. Unless you're when you're setting up money to buy the list, you're also setting up money to go and invest and clean that list. But again, from the point of collecting it, always ask for permission. Double opt-in, it sounds stupid if you're not doing it because you're thinking you're not going to get a big opt-in list. But if they opt in twice, huge difference in quality. The other option is, set expectations. So tell them I'm only going to email you once a month or once a week. All right. So if people know what they're going to get, they're going to be engaged.
And Daryl, I think one thing that's important too is just understanding what you need to do or what you're going to do and how you're going to sell and market to these prospects. Or customers. So understanding, how you're going to use the data is important because that then impacts some of the quality points. So as you mentioned, opt-in is really important. If you are planning to reach out to these prospects or customers by phone, you need to start thinking about things like the DNC, especially if they're potential consumers or their consumer phone numbers. So depending on the type of campaign and how you're reaching out to them, I think there's a lot of data points that you need to worry about from a quality standpoint.
And the last thing is,
I do think go
ahead.
Well, I do think there's and I was going to mirror what Daryl was saying is, one of the most important pieces when you're working with research is that double opt-in piece. And what we found is, if you're just doing a random list of people asking their opinion on politics or whatever it might be, having that double opt-in person who said, yes, I'm in, yes, I'm definitely in. your quality is just going to be it's off the charts higher. It's not even measurable. It's so much better.
So don't be afraid to do that, folks. I mean, you're gonna have to do it. I mean, I know the Canadian anti-spam law is coming out shortly, which is going to be the toughest in the world. It's our understanding, and watch other countries follow suit very quickly. So you've got to make sure you can prove in the case of an audit that they actually have opted in. So another reason to do that. So with that said, we've kind of beat that topic to death. Can use some ideas to do it both at the front end and after the fact. But let's move on to the next question now, which is, okay, assuming I've cleansed the list, all right, how do I expand the size of my list? Because of course we were just saying that if I clean it, it shrinks, and now I gotta expand it again. What's really interesting is a great fact here from the Email Experience Council that says each year corporations lose roughly 1/3 of their email addresses. So you're already starting off in the negative. You got to build back that 1/3 before you can even start, growing beyond that. Now, Eric, what's your experience? You've got some unique approaches to how to do this. Talk to us about that.
Well, yeah. So the kind of to bring the two questions together a little bit is you really do need to understand what you're using the list for. I mean, is it is it an online coupon to the local grocery store? Is it CRM software to a sales manager, or are you trying to use this list for research? And that's what my specialty is. Obviously, is online panels, which is essentially a double opted-in list of people who have profiled themselves specifically for the use in market research. So that's one easy way to expand the universe of people that you can reach out to get that to get those opinions. You can reach out to different panel providers, which is again the research list. So you can reach out to different panel providers, or you can actually build a panel out of your own customers, which is a fantastic and very cost-effective option.
So Eric, earlier Daryl had mentioned, I think, the whole concept of building versus buying. So what are your thoughts there, in terms of the benefits of building your own panel from data you might have currently, or finding ways to build it, versus trying to get access to maybe some of these other research lists or panels that may already be out there and existing?
Absolutely. Well, one of the things about building your own panel, and again, you're going to have to think about what your research needs are. If you're just trying to do customer satisfaction, obviously your customer database is going to be your best option. So then you just need to take into consideration things like, do you want to build your own panel internally, where you might run the risk of some interview bias, for example, or you can reach out to different panel companies who will actually take your database and build a panel for you. And then that way, when you're saying, we've got this new printer for sale or this new piece of software for sale, what do people think about it? And we've got your customers. We have a list of your customers, so we know that they've bought the software. So, so this independent research company can reach out and get a little more clear view of your customer feedback. So that's a one great option, very low cost option for you to build your own panel. And a lot of panel companies will give you the option where, say you have 1 million customers database. We put that on there. We can do a customer satisfaction survey for you. Or if you're doing more of a market research study, obviously we have a much bigger cross-section of your industry where we can reach out to all the other panelists, kind of mix yours into the pot, and you have a much bigger population, maybe more statistically significant population that you can reach out to. It's a little more balanced, and you can do sort of I use 500 of your customers for another project. Well, I'll use 500 of mine to add to your research. So it's sort of that trade-off, and it can be a very cost-effective way to build your own panel and get some really good research.
You know what I love about what Eric's talking about here?
I'm sorry?
No, you know what I love about what you're talking about here is the fact that one of the ways to get people to join your list and expand your reach through social media, etc., is to offer them up an incentive. And the biggest thing you're seeing these days, folks, and I bet you've opted into these because you like the carrot that was presented, is they're sending campaigns to very specialized markets. In other words, if I'm a marketer, I'm only targeting other marketers. And I'm saying, click here to see the results of this study where we polled 1,000 people and about, the biggest challenges in industry ABC. And of course, industry ABC means something to me. So it's a targeted based on title, it's targeted based on industry. And so the idea of using a panel to collect that data so that I can then put together in a piece of content that I can make available to the rest of the world if they opt in to get my content, and I can package in a compelling infographic and share it broadly, again, making them opt in to get it, is huge. So the panel gives you insight, it gives you clarity, it gives you content, it gives you reach, it gives you social media. I mean, it's massive. It's just massive.
Yeah, and I think, looking at it from a sales perspective too, what both of you guys are talking about is, it definitely, Eric obviously is focused a lot on the research side of things, but I see a lot of commonalities with building, sales lists or getting good targeted lists of sales prospects. And definitely the build versus buy comes into play in that discussion as well, because there are lots of online sources that you can go and you can find an actual list today. You can go purchase a list from a list provider. During this talk that we've been having right now, I've probably received 2 or 3 emails from people saying they can sell me a very targeted database of the perfect buyers for my product. But in a lot of cases, it ends up being, you need to look at ways, especially depending on what you're doing and how you're selling. Sometimes you need to look back and build it yourself. And a lot of times it's a matter of just understanding who your current customers are. And, you've got great resources within your organization. You have sales reps that are talking to people every day. Are they doing anything to collect additional contacts? Are they building some of those additional contacts and helping you build your database? I think there's a lot of ways that you can build up your contacts and get some really good targeted ones without necessarily having to go out and buy something.
A cool way we do it, guys, is so we're doing this event here, right? So this actually, use this as an example. So in these kind of events, we invite Eric to the show because he's an expert. He has a point of view that we don't have. But that also means he has an audience that we don't have.
Or so he says.
Or so he claims. That's right. And so working together, we will both mutually, do the invites to our respective contact lists. So I don't have his list, he doesn't have my list, but we agree to do the promotion to a shared registration page where we share the leads. That costs me nothing, but I'm getting his audience, building on his brand and his loyalty, and that makes my message credible. And assuming I am credible and loyal, Rick, stop laughing, then he's benefiting from that as well. So, by all means, look to a complementary partner to do these events together. It's just the way to go. And one more thing to think about, folks, here is that there's 2 ways to get contacts. It's not just about getting contacts online. You can get contacts offline too. Direct mail is not dead. Advertising actually still does work. So you can put those incentives out there. Huge. Whether it's a QR code, whether you're using texting campaigns, going mobile, whatever it might want to be, there's things you can do that are really, really affordable. But in social media, of course, is huge. It's worth the investment. Things like LinkedIn, getting them back to content. You got a focused audience, and you're building on your own network. You're building your own brand. You're building your own list. How can you lose on that? All right, why don't we move on to the last discussion here, folks, which is how can you quickly and affordably optimize your list to be more targeted and more intelligent, as opposed to, I guess, the spray and pray or the shotgun approach. Rick, you're smiling. What's on your mind?
Well, we've already touched on this somewhat in the previous discussions, but I think once again it comes down to how are you targeting your list and who are you targeting. So I speak to clients daily that just definitely have challenges with their targeted sales and marketing efforts. So once again, the key is to ensure that you've got those targeted buyers and users defined, and you have them defined well. So that means building that target market profile. It means building those buyer personas and understanding who you want to target with your sales and marketing efforts. And then based on this, start looking into, where those buyers spend their time. Are there associations that they belong to? Do they attend certain trade shows? Are there certain LinkedIn groups that they belong to? Do they read certain publications? These are all places that they live from a work standpoint. And how do you get in front of them, and how do you leverage some of those sources then to pull some of those contacts and maybe even optimize and make sure that you're a little more targeted in how you market?
A big one you're seeing a lot of. No, go ahead, Eric. I'm sorry.
When you kind of give the research perspective on that, a big part of that is understanding. Again, it is understanding the target you're going for, and understanding that whether you're a list provider or a panel provider, understanding that who your target is. Because there are different panels and different lists that will specialize. Maybe it's a B2C with mothers of three, or maybe it's a kind of a minority panel where you're looking for unacculturated Hispanics, or a B2B panel of IT professionals, HR executives, and there's also medical and ailment panels as well. So there's a lot of specialties and a lot of things to take into consideration. And I would definitely beware of anyone who says, "Yeah, my list can cover it all." That's knowing that your target's going to be very important.
From the big thing right now, of course, is inbound marketing, which is making content to drive contacts back to your site, to start them in the buyer's process, and away you go into the funnel. But the big thing about the content they never talk about is keeping the content relevant. And that's the thing, is you can make content that's very specific to an audience or an issue with clear takeaways that you can then send out to the masses in social media or email or blogs or whatnot, to actually get people to click here to register to download the content. I'll give you an example. Look at this site here. This event we're doing here today. So we're talking about 3 topics, right? Each of these topics can be wrapped up into individual vignettes. So instead of just being one piece of content, I've got the master piece of content. I got each of the discussions stand on their own. So that's 3 more pieces of content. So I made it go 4 different ways. And the beauty of that is I can reach specific audiences. So that's relevant content is huge. And I know people get freaked out with content because they think it takes a lot of time and effort. It doesn't have to. Again, this webinar we went from 1 to 4 with minimal extra work. So, and part of that is don't be afraid to curate. Look at content out there that's hot, that topics are trending, and share that content with your audience. Get them engaged with the conversation. So with that, let's go on to the last thing, the top 3 tips, tricks, and tactics. So what we thought we'd do is we'd poll everybody and say, what do you think? What in everything we talked about, what's the best takeaway for you, our audience, to learn from this? So Eric, we're going to let you go. You're first. You're up.
Great. Well, I would say, I'm not sure if this is a tip or a trick, but there are a lot of resources out there, especially towards research where you have a database of customers. We can put those customers, we can profile them, so we're very targeted. We understand more about them. We can put them into a panel. We can use your own panel, to create, whether it's a customer satisfaction, we can use. But the software, there's so many options out there where the software is actually free for you to do this, and it's just a fantastic opportunity. There's also several products out there, Industry Yardstick being one, where it's actually a free software to help send your customers or your database or whatever database, send it out there to sort of give it's a research tool, a benchmarking tool. So there's a lot of free resources out there that should be taken advantage of.
Yeah, and I think, in terms of top 3 tips, one thing that, we kind of started the presentation with that I think is still important is understanding your current state. So understanding the state of your current marketing list. What do you have? Where is it? What permissions do you have? How can you market and sell to them? And getting a really good understanding of where you're at today, building some of those targeted goals, and then being able to measure it going forward. And so that means, probably having some sort of a CRM system in place that is sophisticated enough that you can track this stuff. As well as, as you mentioned, a lot of the opt-in requirements. So making sure that you can track it and you can measure it.
And for me, my last tip is really a rehash of what I was saying earlier, which is the ability to reuse and recycle content. So put together a content calendar. It could be a webinar series, maybe it's 1 a month, and make sure you've got 1 or 2 extra guests who got good opt-in lists on their own, have good brand recognition and loyalty. So you're going to leverage that, and then design the discussion in such a way that you can dice it and slice it into individual micro topics that will stand on their own and can be repurposed to blogs or to other pieces of content, white papers, case studies, etc. So that way, what you've got is you're leveraging all your guest speakers' contact lists that you don't have, and you're leveraging the reusability of the content you already made into micro pieces of content. So suddenly your SEO goes through the roof and your inbound goes on. So, commit and do it. So with that said, we have gotten through everything we promised to get through. We're in our final minute here, folks. My name's Daryl Prell. I'm with My Lead Agency. Follow me on Twitter @Opinionated. You can see it there on your screen, or just check us out at myleadagency.com. And of course, my partner in crime here, Rick Andrelot, president of Virtual Causeway. He's the big kahuna. You can follow him at Virtual Causeway on Twitter, or go to virtualcauseway.com. But I want to thank Eric Moore of mPanel Online. Check them out, mPanel Online. They can help you out.
Thank you, Daryl.
You're welcome, Eric. Anytime. Thanks for coming. We had a great conversation today. Any last words there, Rick?
No, just I think, once again, just be creative, have fun with it. There are lots of ways that you can help build your list, and you can do it at a nice affordable price.
Thanks a lot, folks. Talk to you next time on the flip side. Take care.